Hey guys, welcome back, and in today's video we'll be discussing if psilocybin and DMT can revolutionise the treatment of psychiatric disorders. Mental health problems are rising across society. Around 1 in 6 adults will experience depression or anxiety once in their lives. And in 2024 alone, the UK recorded 5,717 suicides, showing how urgent the need is for effective treatments. Many people turn to drugs as a way of coping with overwhelming emotions when healthier options feel out of reach. In England and Wales, almost 2.9 million people used drugs last year, a reminder that drug use is deeply connected to how people de-stress. Under controlled conditions, compounds like psilocybin and DMT show potential to support people with psychiatric disorders. This has led researchers to ask whether psychedelics might offer new therapeutic tools where current treatment falls short. To understand this possibility, we first need to explore what these substances are and how they actually act on the brain. Psilocybin is a psychedelic compound found in over 200 species of mushrooms, often referred to as magic mushrooms or shrooms, which you can see on the screen now. Once ingested, psilocybin is converted into psilocin, which is the molecule responsible for altering perception, emotion, and cognition. People may experience heightened emotion, vivid imagery, and changes in time perception and sense of self. Psilocybin works by mainly stimulating the 5-HT2A receptors, which are like docking stations for serotonin, a chemical involved in mood regulation and emotional well-being. This stimulation disrupts usual patterns of brain communication, allowing different brain networks to interact more freely. One key effect is the temporary reduction in the activity of the default mode network, the section of the brain that is involved in self-reflection and rumination. Because the overactivity of the default mode network is linked with conditions such as depression, reducing it may help loosen the rigid, negative thought patterns. Moving on to DMT, or dimethyltryptamine, is another naturally occurring psychedelic found in several plants. It is sometimes called the spirit molecule because of its intense and immersive effects. This image shows purified DMT in its crystallized form. When smoked or vaporized, DMT produces powerful but short-lasting hallucinations and alterations in perception. Like psilocybin, DMT acts strongly on the 5-HT2A receptors, dramatically altering communication between brain regions, but its effects appear much faster. DMT also reduces activity in the default mode network, sometimes leading to ego dissolution, where the boundary between self and the environment temporarily fades. Researchers are investigating whether this rapid reset of brain networks could help interrupt harmful thought patterns associated with psychiatric disorders. Understanding the brain's mechanisms are important, but meaningful progress depends on the clinical trials. One influential study from the Johns Hopkins University drew on the entropic brain theory, the idea that psychedelics increase the brain's flexibility by raising entropy, the brain's ability to form new connections. Using MRI brain scans, researchers found that psilocybin reduced default mode network activity and increased communication across brain regions. In simpler terms, psilocybin appeared to temporarily disrupt rigid patterns linked to anxiety, depression, and PTSD, allowing the brain to enter a more adaptable state. A newer research example involves CYB004, a modified form of DMT currently in phase 2 of clinical trials, which is the stage where researchers test whether a drug works in patients after the initial safety testing of phase 1. This timeline illustrates where the new molecule currently sits in the clinical pipeline. CYB004 is created by replacing some hydrogen atoms with deuterium, a heavier isotope of hydrogen, making the molecule more stable and longer lasting than regular DMT. This allows doctors to deliver controlled, predictable doses, something traditional DMT struggles with as it is rapidly broken down within the body. The trial is run by Cybin and it involves 36 participants with moderate to severe anxiety. They receive either a low or high dose through intramuscular injections alongside supportive psychotherapy. Only treatments that succeed in phase 2 can progress to phase 3, where large-scale trials will be required before drug approval. Even with promising research, psychedelics come with important limitations. They can trigger acute psychological distress, often called a bad trip, involving fear, paranoia, and emotional overwhelm. Physical risks like deorientation and impaired motor function can also occur, especially at high doses or when misused in the presence of alcohol. Responses to psychedelics vary wildly between people. It's influenced by genetics, mental state, medication, and the environment, which makes standardizing doses very difficult. Most current studies involve small, selective samples, making it hard to generalize results to the wider population. Many trials, including those at Johns Hopkins and Psilocybin, focus on short-term outcomes, making it difficult to determine long-term effects. Additionally, psychedelic therapy requires trained therapists, controlled environments, and extensive support, all of which make scaling these treatments challenging. Scientific communication has been shaped by institutions like the Royal Society and the Royal Institution, which emerged around the 17th century. They have helped engage the public and build trust in science. In modern society, however, scientific progress in areas like psychedelic medicine often moves faster than public understanding. This gap can lead to confusion, stigma, and misinformation, especially on social media platforms such as X, formerly known as Twitter, where 250 million people daily share their opinions that may or not be based on evidence. On the screen are comments that are made by members of the public. When discussing psychedelics, the confusion is amplified by broader debates around mental health, masculinity, and substance abuse. In 2024, 70% of men accounted for all suicides, with also being the leading cause of death for men under 35. Biological research also suggests that there are differences in the way men and women process emotion. Men tend to have more interhemispheric communication, which is the communication within the same side of the brain. This can make emotional and rational processing more difficult. This image shows how male and female brains develop slightly differently. This may reinforce why men face mental health challenges in distinct ways, and therefore means that psychedelic therapy may pose unique risks, but also unique opportunities for men if delivered carefully with appropriate psychological support. Another major barrier is legality. Psilocybin and DMT are Class A drugs under the UK Misuse of Drugs Act 1971, meaning their possession, sale, or cultivation is illegal. Here is an overview of the Misuse of Drugs Act and where psilocybin and DMT fall. This restricts funding, slows clinical trials, and makes it difficult to train therapists. These substances can only be approved in clinical studies, which must be authorised by the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. Meanwhile, the legal status of these substances has contributed to a black market where people access unregulated and dangerous products through encrypted apps or the dark web. Interestingly, the modern underground use of psychedelics echoes the historical secrecy of indigenous societies. For centuries, psilocybin and DMT containing plants were used in healing and spiritual ceremonies involving singing and chanting. These traditions were suppressed during the Spanish colonization of America, forcing societies to practice in secrecy as outsiders viewed these rituals as pagan and demonic. Western science rediscovered these substances in the mid-20th century. Chemist Albert Hofmann, shown in this photo, isolated psilocybin in the 1950s. Similarly, DMT was isolated from plants, allowing Stephen Zara, a Hungarian chemist, to conduct the first research into DMT in 1946. To do this, he injected himself and volunteers to study its psychoactive effects. Ethical considerations remain essential. Psychedelic research must acknowledge indigenous origins to avoid cultural appropriation. Access and cost are also key issues. Supervised and trained therapists are expensive, and in a cost of living crisis, treatment may become accessible to only higher income groups, widening the already existing disparities in mental health care. This image shows a breakdown of the cost of living for a single working adult each week. So, can psilocybin and DMT revolutionise psychiatric treatment? I believe they have a strong potential, as early trials highlight how they can disrupt rigid patterns of brain activity, offering new mechanisms that differ from traditional mechanisms. Psychedelics will not be a universal solution to eliminate mental health problems, but they are likely to become an important addition to future treatment options to help reduce suffering for many individuals when used safely. Thanks everyone for listening. Send in your scientific questions now for me to answer next week. Bye!